What if I told you that you are not late, that the desert did not delay you? It translated your steps into the language of heaven. What if the sand that wears you down is a hidden alphabet, and the wind a voice only the unhurried can hear? Do you want to learn to read dust, silence, and thirst until the concealed path rises under your feet? Comparison hisses like cold iron on skin. The human clock points its finger and repeats your name with accusation. Yet inside there is an older pulse, a cadence that refuses to run, a beat that calls you by the heart. Breathe and listen. Haste dries you from within. The Spirit waters you from within. Thirst does not kill you. Thirst tunes you. There are fossil paths beneath the sand, lines dawn reveals when the soul unclenches. Perhaps doors have slammed in your face, and the echo still stings. Perhaps the city rushed past like a violent river. You stood on the bank with your shoes in your hand, certain you missed the boat. But the boat that passed too fast was the wrong one for your destiny. The shadow of the clock whispers that everyone arrived before you, that the last seat is your sentence, that no one is waiting. It measures your worth by deadlines and weighs your faith with a diary. It forgets that love does not take attendance with a pointer. Another voice lives lower than a whisper and firmer than the wind. It does not raise its tone. It adjusts your pace. It calls you by the name heaven gave you, not the nickname of hurry. When that voice speaks, shoulders drop and breath fits the chest again. Today we will not run. We will align. Today we will not perform. We will listen. The desert is not a corridor. It is a school. Here you learn the vocabulary of rock, the grammar of quiet, the theology of thirst. Look at your story from a truer angle. Not everything that shut you out rejected you. Some locks protected you. Heaven has saved you from bright curves that ended in brick. Mercies often dress as delay, so they do not scorch your shine. I know it hurts to watch anniversaries of a promise go by. It hurts to make the bed and feel the day does not recognize you. It hurts to smile on the outside while you chew sand on the inside. Yet pain has a task, and when it finishes, it returns you sharpened. Place your hand on your chest and notice the cadence. It is not the tick of guilt. It is a rivering pulse. When that water finds your thirst, the desert becomes legible. Where there was noise, direction appears. Between what they told you and what God told you, choose what holds your sleep. Between the scream that provokes and the word that embraces, choose what comes back with peace. Between your hurry and the care that accompanies you, choose what never sells you for applause. What remains after the silence? That is your way. Small signs walk ahead of doors. The return of peace is one. A heart without thorns is another. When comparison loses flavor and envy loses breath, the path is close. Heaven does not guide you by shouting. It guides you by fine adjustments. Perhaps they called you slow and mocked your fidelity. Perhaps they measured your offering by the ruler of display. The kingdom measures by roots, not by shop windows. Where no one saw you sprout, God already watched you grow. Make a simple act now, almost childlike. Empty the stones from your pockets. Drop the guilts that weigh you down. Open your fingers and let the dust of comparisons fall. Notice how the hand grows lighter to receive the new. Turn your attention to what wakes you better, not to what leaves you electric. The Spirit does not win you by exhaustion. He wins you by care. When care finds you, a trustworthy ground rises within. Feet that trembled begin to obey with gentle firmness. See how your story carried interruptions that rescued you. That meeting that canceled, that yes that never arrived, that door that sent you home. Not every pause is loss. Some pauses are heaven's shortcut to your safety. Love grabbed your collar before the cliff, and you called it delay. I invite you to decide who owns your pace. Decide that your tongue will bless your road, not curse your road, not curse your harvest. Decide that your night will hold simple prayer and an open notebook. Decide that your day will carry quiet obedience instead of noisy proof. You are not late. You are being tuned. Human clocks mark hour. Kairos marks destiny. Stay with me a little longer, because before the middle, a single verse will turn your route, and tonight a quiet sign will find you as you sleep. Say okay when you are ready for part 2. The fight you feel is not theater. It is a pressure behind the ribs that steals breath. Hurry claws at your spine and paints failure on your walls. Comparison drips like acid on the heart and names you by the hour instead of the call. Doors close, and the echo calls you unworthy. Timelines parade past like chariots while you stand with dust on your shoes. You think the world is left and that God is late. But late is a language invented by fear, not by heaven. There are 3 voices contending for your steps. Your own voice, tired yet honest, that simply wants a map. The shadow voice of the clock, loud, clever, impatient, selling panic as wisdom. And the voice of the psalm, low as a lamp at dawn, firm as a shepherd's staff. Your voice says, I am trying. The shadow says you are failing. The psalm says, wait for the Lord, and let your heart be strong. Your voice says, I cannot carry another day. The shadow says you have already missed your chance. The psalm says his mercy is new in the morning. The shadow is skilled with numbers and noise. It keeps a ledger of who arrived first and who clapped the loudest. It swears that status is holy and that speed is purity. But speed without spirit is only dust moving faster. The psalm is different. It does not argue. It retunes. It places a hand on your pulse and lengthens your breath. It raises a shelter in the middle of the heat and names you by promise, not by pace. Inside this conflict, your body speaks too. Shoulders rise like shields, jaw locks, sleep thins, thoughts race in circles. The soul feels like a tight drum and the spirit like a candle fighting a gust. Do not despise the signals. They are the alarms of a beloved house. Some will mock your slowness because they fear their own emptiness. Some will call your listening a lack of ambition. Let them keep their noise. You keep your flame. Quiet is not withdrawal. Quiet is alignment. Listen to witnesses from ordinary rooms. I stopped narrating ruin, and I felt peace return like a tide. I gave my timeline back to God, and a door opened that I did not plan. I served someone in secret, and heaven remembered me in public. The valley has a script, and it begins with an honest lament. Name the ache without dressing it in shame. Tell God the sentence you are afraid to say aloud. In that honesty, the storm drops its theater, and the wind begins to guide. Now the countermove. Lift a short confession that is stronger than the noise. Even though I walk, I am not alone. Your rod and your staff ease my steps. Let the mouth disciple the heart until the heart believes its own voice. Then hold a thin silence that can carry weight. 30 seconds will do, with palms open and jaw unclenched. Let morning mercy kiss the ear of your spirit. Often the first clean thought that returns is the next true step. Sometimes the answer is a small task that feels unimpressive. Send a note of honor, steward a forgotten draft, tidy the threshold you have avoided. The kingdom turns on hinges that do not glitter. Each humble act tells the shadow, you will not be trained by fear. You want proof that this is more than pretty language. Watch the fruit. Panic loosens its grip. Envy loses oxygen. Cynicism sounds thin and tired. Peace returns like a soft tide, and with it a clear invitation you could not hear before. The battle does not end by argument. It ends by oxygen. Breath in the spirit, breath out the rush. Breath in the promise, breath out the theater. In 3 minutes of true breath, tyrants stumble. Tonight you will receive a psalm password. It is small enough for a pocket and strong enough for a gate. Before sleep, read Psalm 27 verse 14 slowly, as if drinking. Say 3 times with calm authority, I synchronize my pace to yours. Place a notebook by your bed. If you wake with a clean, repeated thought, do not debate it, write it. It may be the map for your next faithful step. Heaven is not late. Heaven is precise, and precision sounds like peace. If the shadow shouts at dawn, answer with your shelter. Speak the verse before your feet touch the floor. Ask the Lord to make you hear his loving kindness in the morning and to show you the way to walk. Then stand and move one small faithful inch in the direction given. You are not losing while you learn this tempo. You are being kept while others burn out in glittering circles. Roots are growing where cameras do not reach. When the time arrives, the fruit will seem sudden, but heaven knows the hours. This is the invisible conflict, and it is holy ground. Not the field of public triumphs, but the tent where pace is restored. Let the psalm speak louder than the clock. Let care conquer you before the crowd does. You have named the battle. Now let the desert become a bath rather than a courtroom, because purification is not a performance, but a tender scrubbing of the soul where grit becomes shine, and the heart remembers its first voice. Bring your weariness into the open, as someone brings clothes to water, because shame thrives in secrecy, yet loses strength in light. And allow your honesty to be the door where mercy enters without asking for credentials. Say what hurts without varnish, and without blaming yourself for bleeding, because Psalm 42 teaches that thirst can sing when it is not denied. And as you speak, notice how the heat in your chest loosens and makes room for breath. Now raise a confession that is stronger than the noise and kinder than your inner critic. Not to impress God, but to let your mind stand under truth until truth stands within you. Even though I walk through what feels like an endless valley, I am not unaccompanied, for a staff steadies my step and a rod corrects my drift. And where fear once controlled my stride, companionship now sets the rhythm. Allow these words to move from your lips into your ribs until the heart believes its own mouth, because faith often returns through the same door where doubt entered. Give the body permission to arrive where the spirit already is, loosening the jaw that has clenched every unfinished story and lowering the shoulders that learn to live as armor. Let the breath grow longer than the fear, the inhale drawing in care and the exhale giving back the rush, until the room feels larger and the thoughts stop circling like thirsty birds. In that widened space, the Spirit speaks without thunder and guides without push, placing a quiet hand on the back and leaning you toward the next faithful inch. Take a small vessel of water if you can, or imagine one if you cannot, and see upon its surface the cloudy film of comparison and the grit of old accusations that have clung to your name. Dip your fingers as if baptizing your attention, then lift them and let the drops fall like discarded verdicts, choosing to release what once felt indispensable to your image. You are not washing away ambition. You are rinsing the fear that made ambition your master, and the water knows how to carry what you no longer need. There is a practice for evenings when the mind tries to rehearse defeat, a gentle sequence that turns the bed into an altar and sleep into a tutor rather than a thief. Read slowly the call to wait and to take courage from Psalm 27 verse 14, not as a slogan, but as bread, letting each word soften the hard places behind your sternum. Speak 3 times with settled authority that you synchronize your pace to the Lord's. Then let silence come like a blanket and cover the parts of you that still twitch with yesterday's alarms. Morning has its practice as well, not a sprint of declarations, but a careful listening that gathers manna before the sun grows fierce. Before the screen or the list, ask the Lord to make you hear his loving kindness at daybreak and to show you the path for your feet, and linger long enough for peace to answer. Write down the first clean and repeated thought, however unglamorous it appears, because direction often wears the clothes of a small duty that pride would ignore. Purification changes the metric of progress from spectacle to fruit, so watch for signs that do not love applause. When the tongue grows gentle toward your own name, when envy loses oxygen and gossip tastes like dust, when you can bless someone who overtook you without shrinking, know that the river is running inside the sand. These are not accidents of mood, but evidence that the inner climate is turning, and where the climate turns, the landscape yields. If you need a visible act to seal what you are learning, choose one task that serves rather than shines, and do it in the spirit of crown rather than stage. Answer with honor where silence would have been petty. Finish a forgotten draft that still carries promise. Or tidy the threshold you keep stepping over because it reminds you of delay. Let this act be your yes to God rather than your plea to people, for the kingdom turns on hinges that rarely glitter. There will still be days when the clock shouts and the crowd seems to move as one bright river. And on such days remember that purity of pace is not the same as slowness, but the courage to refuse a rhythm that breaks you. Return to breath that is longer than fear, and to words that are kinder than panic. Then stand up and move the next faithful inch, because obedience has a way of summoning tomorrow without spectacle. In this way you do not escape the desert by force. You allow the desert to finish its work, and when it does the same ground that scratched, you will begin to guide you. If the thought comes that you have wasted years, answer it with the truth that protection often wears the coat of postponement, and that love sometimes holds you by the collar before a cliff. You are being kept, not sidelined, and the evidence is the peace that returns without bargaining and the clarity that arrives without noise. When such peace visits, receive it as instruction rather than indulgence, and let your schedule bend to what your soul can carry with grace. You are not being purified to become fragile, but to become precise, not to shrink, but to walk as one who hears the drone that others miss. The fire that once burned wildly now burns clean, and the water that once felt scarce now flows within the ribs with an authority that does not shout. Stay close to this cadence, for the path that was hidden begins to appear when the heart keeps time with heaven. Manifestation rarely arrives with trumpets. It slips in like a change of weather, first felt on the skin before it is seen with the eyes. The rush inside you loosens its grip, and the room seems to grow a quiet backbone. What once demanded proof now offers peace, and the path that hid in the glare begins to glow in the shade. You notice that words have weight, so you choose a language that pulls tomorrow toward you, instead of dragging yesterday behind you. Where you used to say everything is late, you begin to say, I am being prepared. Where you used to claim nothing works, you begin to confess the work within is reshaping the ground beneath. The tongue lays rails and the day learns to run on them. There is a daily landing that steadies the inner weather, a small hour that does not shout but anchors. You return to the same chair, the same page, the same simple prayer, and repetition becomes a river rather than a cage. In that faithful place your breath slows, your thoughts stop circling, and the compass needle finds north without the theater of lightning. Then comes the crown that is light enough to wear in secret. It rests on choices that look ordinary to crowds, but sacred to heaven. The email answered with honor, the craft sharpened when no one is watching, the kindness given where you once demanded applause. Authority settles not as swagger, but as steadiness. Proof follows like shadow in sunlight. A message arrives from a door you stopped knocking. A face softens that used to harden at your name. A timing aligns that no schedule could engineer. You are not forcing outcomes. You are moving with a current that finally knows your stride, and others sense it even if they cannot name it. The body witnesses the shift. Sleep returns as a friend rather than a truce. The jaw loosens without permission, and your shoulders forget the posture of accusation. Where panic once wrote scripts across your chest, clarity now writes brief instructions, and obedience becomes a joy rather than a negotiation. Do not despise the smallness of these beginnings, for kingdoms turn on hidden hinges. A whisper answers what shouts could not. A narrow gate opens where a wide door refused, and the desert that scraped you clean now offers you a map stamped with quiet authority. You are learning to move at the speed of trust. Keep speaking from the future you are receiving. Keep landing in the place that steadies you. Keep wearing the crown that chooses service over spectacle. In that rhythm, invitations find you without you chasing them, and what once felt random begins to gather into a pattern that sings. The manifestation is not a blast. It is a becoming. If you listen closely, you will hear the same verse returning like a tide, and with it, the courage to walk one more faithful inch. This is how the unseen becomes seen, how preparation turns into appointment, how a tuned heart pulls its season into view. Say okay when you are ready for part 5. You thought delay was punishment, but here's the quiet twist that has been waiting behind the heat. The late you feared was a hand on your collar, holding you before a glittering cliff. The wide door that flashed at you months ago was a stage with no floor, and love kept you from stepping where applause would have swallowed your bones. The desert did not waste you. It translated you into a language that timing understands. Look again at the path you did not take. It promised speed and called itself favor. Yet beneath the carpet, the boards were rotten and the final step was air. Heaven let you feel the ache of waiting, so you would taste the safety of wisdom. And what you called a closed season was a shelter with its windows open toward a better horizon. Protection often sounds like no, and only later does the yes reveal its face. Consecration begins when you choose not to run from yourself. Place the flame you have been guarding on the ground of trust and watch what happens. Surrender does not extinguish fire. It multiplies heat without smoke and turns a spark into a steady hearth. The moment you stop wrestling the clock, the room fills with a presence that does not hurry and yet makes things move. Seal this turning with a vow that is quiet and specific. For 7 dawns, walk at the pace of heaven and let that cadence mark your hours. Wait before the screens and open the page that has already carried your weight. Speak with your whole chest that you will wait for the Lord and that your heart will be strong. Ask to hear loving kindness in the morning and to be shown the path for your feet, and linger until the breath of peace answers from within your ribs. This is not superstition. It is alignment. Carry the vow into the day without theater. Choose one small act that belongs to the future you are receiving, and let it happen where no one claps. Answer with honor where silence would have been petty. Finish the good work that you hid, because it did not glitter. Serve someone who cannot repay you, and do it as though you were polishing a crown in a back room. Authority begins to rest on you not as a pose, but as weight that steadies your voice. As you walk this way, the evidence gathers in places the camera does not reach. Sleep returns as a friend, and not as a truce. Appetite for comparison thins, and the jaw that carried years of unfinished sentences releases like rope slipping from a mooring. Messages arrive from doors you stopped knocking, not as prizes for performing, but as fruit from a tree finally planted by a river. You are not forcing outcomes. You are agreeing with a current that knows your stride. Let your language stay married to the future rather than chained to the past. Speak as one who is being prepared rather than as one who is perpetually punished. Bless the ground you stand on and call it training. Bless the people who pass you and call them signs that the road is real. Bless the hours you cannot control and call them the hands that tune your heart. What you name sets the table for what arrives. If the old panic returns and the crowd surges by like a bright river, remember what the desert taught you. You do not have to match a rhythm that breaks you to prove you are alive. Stand, breathe longer than the fear, let the promise fill more space than the noise, and step one faithful inch in the direction already revealed. Obedience draws tomorrow into view with a calm no spotlight can fake. Now comes the moment the story has been escorting you toward. You put your ear to the hard place and hear water moving inside the stone. You rest the flame on the ground and feel heat spread into the soil. You release the race and the map rises from the sand like a coastline at low tide. The same place that scraped you clean begins to guide you, and what once felt random falls into a pattern that sings. You are not late. You are tuned. Human clocks tally minutes. Kairos gathers meaning. The delay that accused you becomes the door that introduces you at the right temperature, in the right posture, with the right words. When people ask how it happened, your answer will taste like rain and sound like peace, because the true miracle was not an event, but a heart that learned to keep time with heaven. If this word has read you, do not let it evaporate into sentiment. Speak aloud now that you synchronize your pace to the Lord, and that you will keep this cadence for 7 days without bargaining. Write the clean instruction that keeps repeating, however small or plain, and give it a home in your calendar before the hour ends. Share honor quietly, and let your life become the proof that stillness can move mountains. When the water begins to show through the cracks, do not rush to own it. Kneel and give the first drink back to the one who struck the rock. Your calling is not a performance to protect, but a flame to steward, and the safest hands you will ever find for that flame are the hands that made you. Keep close to this simple way, and the path will keep appearing under your feet, like a song you thought you had forgotten. If this speaks to you, write, "I decode the desert," and pass it to the one who thinks they have missed their hour, because perhaps their clock is simply too loud, and their heart has not yet heard the quieter drum.